Before playlists and algorithms, radio was a secret world where daring bands could still slip through unnoticed. In the 1960s, some groups didn't just follow trends, they quietly shaped them. Today, we rewind the tape to uncover the most underrated bands of the 1960s and why they deserved far more recognition than they ever received. Procol Harum. Procol Harum, a whiter shade of pale. Is there any song that feels more like the 60s than that? Even if you don't know the name, you definitely know that haunting opening organ riff. But Procol Harum was far more than a one-hit wonder. They were pioneers of what would later become progressive rock, blending classical structures, borrowing from Bach, and fusing them with heavy blues and soulful vocals. Gary Brooker's voice sounded like it had been aged in a whiskey barrel, and their lyrics felt less like pop songs and more like epic poetry. Procol Harum wasn't just a band, they were an experience.
The 13th Floor Elevators.
The 13th Floor Elevators. Hailing from Austin, Texas, the 13th Floor Elevators are credited as the first band to call their sound psychedelic rock. Led by the brilliant but troubled Roky Erickson, they introduced the electric jug, creating a hypnotic, bubbling drone that felt like nothing else on the radio. Their 1966 debut featured the explosive hit, You're Gonna Miss Me. A blast of raw garage psych. Though drug busts and Erickson's mental health struggles eventually derailed the band, their uncompromising sound laid the groundwork for the psychedelic movement, influencing everyone from ZZ Top to Tame Impala.
The Turtles.
And you for me, so happy together.
The Turtles. While Happy Together is one of the most recognizable pop songs ever recorded, the Turtles were far more experimental than their sunny image suggested. Beneath the harmonies of Howard Kaylan and Mark Volman was a rebellious creative streak. Their album, The Turtles Present the Battle of Bands, saw them adopt a new musical identity on every track. They later worked with Frank Zappa, drifting into bizarre, satirical, and psychedelic territory. They were world-class vocalists who refused to take the music industry too seriously, and that's exactly what made them one of the most fascinating and underrated acts of the 60s. Moby Grape. If you want a textbook example of how to ruin a great band, look at Moby Grape. They were the ultimate San Francisco supergroup. All 5 members could write, sing lead, and play. But their label's disastrous decision to release 5 singles on the same day overwhelmed listeners and made them seem like a gimmick. Listen to their debut album today, though, and it's astonishing. They blended country, blues, and psychedelia better than almost anyone. Legal battles and bad luck destroyed their momentum, but musically, they were every bit as brilliant as the Beatles. These are still hidden giants of the British invasion and beyond, bands whose stories are just as dramatic as their music. The Dave Clark Five.
It's wrong to say I don't think of you.
At the peak of the British invasion, the Dave Clark Five were the only group to seriously challenge the Beatles' chart dominance. Known for the Tottenham sound, their music was driven by booming drums and Mike Smith's raw, soulful vocals. Hits like Glad All Over and Bits and Pieces became massive international successes. Remarkably, the band appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show 18 times, more than any other British group. Dave Clark was also a business pioneer, becoming one of the first musicians to own his master recordings and film rights. That's not just rock history, that's music industry revolution. The Zombies. The Zombies are often remembered for their haunting 1968 classic, Time of the Season. Yet their story is one of rock's greatest tragedies. Their final album, Odyssey and Oracle, is now ranked alongside Sgt. Pepper as a masterpiece, but the band had already broken up before it was released. By the time Time of the Season became a global smash, the members had moved on to other jobs. Their sophisticated use of minor key melodies and jazz-influenced keyboards created a baroque pop sound that remains one of the most elegant legacies of the 1960s.
The Association.
The Association. You couldn't walk into a grocery store or a wedding reception in the 60s without hearing the perfect harmonies of Cherish or Never My Love, which became one of the most played songs on American radio history. They were the very first band to play the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967, yes, before Jimi Hendrix set his guitar on fire. Masters of the studio, they layered vocals so complex that even today's best bands struggle to replicate their sound.
Steve Miller Band.
I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight talker.
The Steve Miller Band. While modern audiences know the Steve Miller Band for 70s hits like The Joker, their early 60s work was a grittier strain of San Francisco blues. Early on, the band featured the immense talent of Boz Scoggs and explored expansive psychedelic soundscapes. Their 1968 debut, Children of the Future, recorded in London, remains a masterclass in experimental blues rock. Before the space cowboy persona took over, Miller and Scoggs were architects of the underground West Coast sound, bridging Chicago blues and high-concept psychedelia.
The Masked Marauders.
Ever wondered how far a rumor could travel before the internet? In 1969, Rolling Stone ran a fake review of a secret supergroup featuring Paul McCartney, Mick Jagger, Bob Dylan, and John Lennon just to mock the industry. The prank worked too well. Fans flooded record stores demanding the album. To save face, the magazine hired session musicians to record a real LP under the name. It hit the Billboard charts, becoming one of the most successful musical hoaxes in history. Some bands didn't just follow the 1960s, they expanded its boundaries so far that the industry didn't know what to do with them. These were the innovators, rebels, and cult legends who quietly reshaped rock history. Kaleidoscope. In terms of pure technical skill, few groups could match the sheer diversity of California's Kaleidoscope. Most guitar fans know Jimmy Page, but many don't realize he once called Kaleidoscope his favorite band of all time. They were essentially pioneers of world music in a rock context, blending Middle Eastern instruments with psychedelic folk. Led by the great David Lindley, their ability to jump from bluegrass to Turkish folk in a single set made them a legendary cult act that defied every commercial category of the era. The Sonics. If you've ever cranked up Nirvana or the White Stripes, you're hearing the DNA of the Sonics. These guys from Tacoma, Washington were pure, unfiltered noise in an era of polite pop. You might know The Witch or Psycho, but listening today, it's shocking how heavy they really were. They didn't just play rock and roll, they screamed it. The drums were distorted, the sax was jagged, and they basically invented garage rock. They were punks a decade before punk had a name, proving you didn't need a big studio to change music forever. The Standals. The gritty, defiant spirit of 1966 is captured perfectly by the Standals and their anthem, Dirty Water. Though the song became a permanent tribute to Boston and the Charles River, the band actually came from Los Angeles. yet every Red Sox fan knows it by heart. As the track still echoes through Fenway Park today. But the Standals were much more than a one-hit wonder. They represented the tough side of the Sunset Strip scene. Frequently appearing in films and TV shows like The Monkees, their organ-drenched, rebellious sound gave the mid-60s airwaves a raw, street-level edge. Strawberry Alarm Clock. The moment the opening notes of Incense and Peppermints hit, you're back in the summer of love. Most people remember Strawberry Alarm Clock as the ultimate psychedelic one-hit wonder, but there's more to the story. Their guitarist was a young Ed King, who later joined Lynyrd Skynyrd and wrote the legendary riff for Sweet Home Alabama. Strawberry Alarm Clock wasn't just bubblegum pop. They were serious musicians, experimenting with odd time signatures and complex arrangements that helped define the LA psych sound. The Rascals. You remember groovin', right? The Rascals, known then as the Young Rascals, were masters of blue-eyed soul, but they were tougher and braver than their sunny hits suggested. They famously refused to play any venue that wasn't integrated. If black fans couldn't sit with white fans, the Rascals simply wouldn't perform. With a massive R&B heart and a Hammond organ sound that could shake theaters, they weren't just a pop band, they were a powerhouse with a conscience. The Kinks. While the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and the Who dominate British invasion history, the Kinks were arguably the most observant and literate of them all. Led by Ray Davies, they evolved from the raw power chords of You Really Got Me into sharp social commentary. Their 1968 album, The Kinks Are the Village Green Preservation Society, was a commercial flop at the time, but is now hailed as a seminal concept album. It explored disappearing traditions of English life, offering a nostalgic alternative to the blues-driven aggression of their peers. The Left Banke. The second you hear the harpsichord on Walk Away Renee, you know you're listening to something special. We call it baroque pop today, and Left Banke basically invented it. These guys were just teenagers when they started blending rock with string quartets and woodwinds. It wasn't a gimmick. The songwriting was sophisticated, full of that classic 60s longing. Unfortunately, internal conflicts tore the band apart far too early, but for a brief moment, they were making the most beautiful classical rock music on the planet. Love. In the 1960s Los Angeles scene, Love was often considered the coolest band in town, even eclipsing the early popularity of The Doors. Fronted by the enigmatic Arthur Lee, Love became one of the first multiracial rock bands to achieve major acclaim. Their 1967 masterpiece, Forever Changes, appears on countless greatest albums lists. Blending acoustic folk, dark lyrics, and sweeping orchestral arrangements, it captured the paranoia at the end of the hippie era perfectly. Though they rarely toured outside California, their influence on psychedelic folk and indie rock still resonates today. The Box Tops.
Ticket for an aeroplane. Ain't got time to take a fast.
Give me a ticket for an airplane. You know that gritty, soulful voice. It sounds like someone who's lived a lifetime. Most people are shocked to learn that Alex Chilton was only 16 years old when he recorded The Letter. The Box Tops brought a raw Memphis soul edge to the charts that many British bands could only dream of. Alex Chilton later led Big Star, but his time as a teenage soul sensation was legendary. Recorded at American Sound Studio, their songs carried an authentic Southern groove that set them apart from bubblegum pop. To be continued. Subscribe and stay tuned for part 2 in the next video.